everyone. Myself Dr. Andhruti Shah, currently working as an assistant professor, Government Degree College, Bukhal. Today we are going to study about Mary Wollstonecraft, Vindication Rights for the Women, prescribed for MA 3rd semester, course title Literature and Gender. So let us examine Mary Wollstonecraft, Vindication Rights for the Women. In many ways, Mary Wollstonecraft essay, Vindication Rights for the Women, can be considered as a discourse on feminism. Published in the year 1792, this essay was published after the Vindication Rights for the Men. Mary was writing Vindication Rights for the Men in response to Edmund Burke. In this essay, Vindication Rights for the Women, Mary argues that women were equal to men in all respect. The lack of education and societal structure inhibited women from competing with the men. Mary Wollstonecraft was born on 27th April 1759 in London and died on 30th of August 1797. She was the first woman to write exclusively on the political affairs. So let's start this lecture with some couple of the dates. Women could not attend college until 1854. The end of slavery in 1865. The civil rights movement and the women's movement of 1960 are not that long ago. So we have to keep all these things in mind. Women couldn't vote until 1920. So when we talk about women or their rights, we come across a term that is feminism. The term feminism describes the political, cultural and the economic movement that aims to establish equal rights and legal protection for women. Feminist history can be divided into three waves. The first wave, occurring in the 19th and early 20th century, was mainly concerned with women's right to vote, which is also being called as suffrage. The second wave, at its height in 1960s and 1970s, refers to the women liberation movement for equal legal and social right. The second wave slogan, "Personal is political," identified women cultural and political inequalities and encouraged women how their personal life reflected sexist power structure. The third wave feminism, beginning in the 1990s, refers to the continuation of and reaction to the second wave feminism. Feminism at its core has powerful and empowering values not only for the women but also for the men. Because if we take the idea that everybody is equal and should have equal opportunity, then everybody should brought up, not brought down by that. But now when we talk about Mary Wollstonecraft, she is writing this essay in 1792, and this text, Vindication Rights for the Women, is about human rights. This vindication is about the importance of women's voice, women's education and women empowerment. Wollstonecraft was actually ridiculed in her time. It is not easy and never easy when somebody takes a stand for the human rights. It is called vindication, and when we see the term vindication, we should think of polemics or a kind of a controversy. In order to be a vindication, there has to be somebody presenting some sort of resistance. This is actually the second of Wollstonecraft vindication, as she wrote Vindication Rights for the Men in 1790. This was 1792. Vindication Rights for the Women. And when we compare these two books, there is a kind of a parallelism there. But the second work is something which is being considered as more important. So what is Vindication all about? What is the context of this Vindication? This is something which we people are going to talk in the next segment. So if we look at the dedication, she dedicates this text to Talleyrand. Talleyrand have written a report to the French National Assembly, and in his report he is talking about education in general. Talleyrand in his report had a part in there where he says that women should get only domestic education, men should get the public education. Women should get a kind of an education which is being provided at home. So Wollstonecraft is actually responding to this report by writing something to say, no, you have got something wrong over here. The position you are taking is wrong-headed and misguided. While she is writing this, she is giving it in a form of different chapters. You might say a self-contained essay. She is coming back to say some basic ideas, looking at them by giving multiple perspectives. When we look towards the text, we will notice that she is engaging several authors also. One of them is extremely important and particularly important, that is Rousseau, who had been very influential on the French thought. If we focus on one of the central point around which the entire Vindication is constellated or moves around is education. In her time, Wollstonecraft made a very controversial statement in which he said that marriage and prostitution are the same. There was no difference, because if a woman can work, if she can't have a property, if she can't have a bank account, she is not educated, she cannot read, and she marries just because it is being expected out of her, and without a husband she may literally starve to the death and do not have a roof over her head. What is that different than a prostitute being paid for her services? Now let us look towards some of the major excerpts from the text. Education is very important, but for that, society has to change the order for education. She advocates that education uses reason and leads to independence of the mind. And that independence of mind for women is extraordinarily important. She believes that society itself is obviously going to keep women weaker and less educated because of just the way society is set up. Wollstonecraft starts from the premise that all men enslave women. Men dominates women as a plutocrat dominates the slave. In permeating this idea that women are opposed by all men, Wollstonecraft accords that all women, including herself. Wollstonecraft begins to argue that at a concrete level, when she confronts and say foibles of the women, that is, women are ready for the acceptance to their inferior education. The next statement is from the following passage on Rousseau's idea about women as a sexual object illustrates Wollstonecraft's dislike of teasing behavior. Rousseau declares that women should never for a moment feel herself independent that she should be governed by fear. Wollstonecraft sees women as slaves to men, not just because of male sexual lust, but women enslaves themselves with fashion and eager acceptance of inadequate education. She also re-emphasizes that historical subjugation of the women is linked to male desire as well as his desire to attain political and social power. Faced with oppression, women have simply made wrong choices. Consequently, Wollstonecraft can posit collective rebellion. Since slave resist master and all men oppress all women, women will by implication resist their male masters. She overtly advises women to educate themselves and warns men that vengeance can strike from several directions. Now we are moving towards the conclusion. Put it another way, Mary Wollstonecraft construction of vindication rights for the women is within specific social and cultural boundaries. She is writing this text around 18th century. Her resist produces a covered text. Her sense of personal singularity occludes her vision as a tool of resistance. Despite radical outlook, moreover, she subscribes a sense of class hierarchy that demands for the greater distribution of wealth and legal representation for the female independence. In that sense, her text brilliantly illuminates the bourgeois project of liberation. She embodies the liberal ideals of progress in demanding freedom and thus shaping the text into a new determination. I hope you like this video. Thank you.